everyone. Can somebody very kindly tell me when you can hear me, when it starts? And also I wanted to let you know that the slides for today are posted on Course Spaces, just at the bottom there, and hopefully you can find those. Wonderful, it's working. You can hear me typing. Oh dear. Okay, that's perfect. All right, well, hi everybody. I can't believe it. We've all made it here to the last class together. This class always makes me sad because I miss the class so much when it's over. But I'm sure that you're going to be relieved. People are saying it sounds a bit echoey, so let me see if I can improve that. I don't know why it's echoey. I don't think I've done anything different today. Let's take a look here. Is that any better? Well, I have turned off the desktop audio, so I'm going to hope that it settles down. Is it any better yet in terms of being able to hear me? I know I haven't done anything different. Okay, well, I'm going to get started and hope it settles and hope that it's not too distracting for you. All right, so here we are. Last class, like I said, it's always really sad for me because I miss you terribly when the term's over, but I know it's going to be a relief for all of you. To be able to just focus on everything else that's going on. I've been so impressed with how you've all stuck with me, and here you all are again today online, so thank you very much. Can somebody tell me if they've managed to find the slides on Course Spaces? That would be a big help. So what I'm going to do today is try to bring everything together for you in terms of the course. And the first thing I want to do is just put down some of the questions that I think you might have. I'm guessing that the most important questions you have to do with the final, if I'm guessing correctly. So usually I do that at the end, but today I want to start with that so that you don't have that worry on your mind and you know exactly how it is that it's all going to happen. So let's start with that, shall we? If nothing else, that's hopefully going to set your minds at rest in terms of how we've set everything up. So, here's what we've come up with in terms of the final. It's really important to me that the final is fair and graded very, very fairly. And the way that we do that is the four of us, the 3 TAs and myself, we grade all the same questions. So it's called grading across. And so in order to make sure that nothing gets muddled and everything stays clear and clean, what I'm going to do is to divide the final exam into 4 parts. So the final exam will be posted as 4 separate pieces. They will all come together to form the final exam, but they'll be posted in 4 parts, just exactly the same as we've been posting the assignments that you've been submitting. And that's why we did it that way, because we know you know how to do that, because we've had practice at that with the assignments that you've been doing. So there'll be 4 parts, and here's exactly on this slide where to find them. If you go onto Course Spaces, I've taken a picture here. If you go onto Course Spaces and you find the picture of the textbook that's right at the top of the Course Spaces site, and you go underneath that, that is where I've put the information for the final exam. And if you scroll down just there, you'll find that I've already posted, they're just fake pieces of paper for now, but you can see that I've already posted parts 1 through 4, so that you can see exactly where they'll be and how to do it. I want you to have as much reassurance as possible that you know exactly where to go and what it's going to look like. So when it comes to it, on the 18th, I will replace those 4 pieces of colored paper with the 4 parts of the exam. They will all be posted together so that you can read through them all if you wish. You can do them in whichever order you wish, and you can submit them as you go along, or you can submit them all at the end. It's entirely up to you. I would recommend saving them down and resaving them with your name and the part that it is. So in my case, it would be Dawson Part 1, Dawson Part 2, etc. And that way you'll keep everything nice and organized. The exam itself should take you 2 hours, but I'm going to make sure that I allow 30 minutes in addition to that. So on top of the 2 hours, I will not be closing the Course Spaces as an assignment, so I won't be closing it until at least 30 minutes later. And that 30 minutes allows you to deal with the technology. If you have any issues with saving or uploading or anything like that. And I will be there on my email the entire time that the exam is happening. So I will be monitoring the Course Spaces. I'll be checking that it's working. I'll be checking for email from any of you in case anything goes wrong. And I don't want you to worry. I want you to just try to treat it like a normal exam as much as humanly possible. So that's where it's going to be posted. And that's where you will find it, and that's where you'll submit it, just like we've been doing with the assignments. So that's the first part. So before I get into content, I want to know, are there any questions about how to find the exam or submit the exam? That's my first question. Now, if you have accommodations with CAL, to my knowledge, there's only 2 of you who do. Please, please, please let me know. What I've done is an override to the system to allow for those special accommodations for those particular 2 students that I'm aware of. But if you have any concerns whatsoever, please email me directly. So I'll just wait and see if there are any questions about that or if that's clear. This allows us to then grade the exam in the 4 parts, each of us taking a quarter of it, and to put the exam results into the spreadsheet online through Course Spaces, so it keeps everything nice and clean. Now, in terms of support for the exam, I have already let you know, but I'll let you know again, that I will be holding 2 online interactive office hours. Just as I would normally, I would always have extra office hours before the final to help you. So I will be sure to have those office hours, and those will be conducted using Zoom. And I will send you a link a few days before the office hours are due. And all you have to do is click on that link at the right time, and you will be included into the online session. And then you can talk, you can be seen, you can ask me any questions that you like, and you can also hear all the questions that other people have, so that hopefully I don't answer them more than once, and that will just help everyone at the same time. So please feel free to join me for those office hours. I have them from 9 till 10 and from 2 to 3 set up on April the 17th. That's the Friday, so the day before the exam. If you have other questions, of course, you're welcome to email me, but it's usually easier to explain things in person. So try to come to the office hours if you can. With Zoom, if you're using your computer, you only need to click on the link. You don't need to load any software, and it's free because I've paid for the Zoom Professional so that you can all join. And we can be on there as long as we need to be, and also it's free to you because I've paid for it. If you are using your phone to join, not your computer, then you do need to load the software, but you only need to load the free one. You don't need to pay for anything. Okay? Just a reminder that Lab 11 is designed to help support you with the final. It's revised and posted, and you should be working on it this week to help you with your studying. And Newspaper 3 is due this week as at the time as if you were having it in lab, and that is posted, and I can see that most people have submitted those already, so well done. Congratulations, and again, that should help you with the final. Now, something that's very important to me is to make sure that you know how you're standing going into the final. I know there has been a lot of correspondence. I know that there's been a lot of talk about grades and so on, and people worrying about grades in other courses. What I want to say to you is that I've been keeping an eye on things carefully, and those people who've been keeping up with the course, I am expecting the grades to be just as they would be normally. That is, the same range of grades, the same average for the class. You're really good students, so if anything, the average may be slightly higher. But I want to assure you that if you've been with me online and you've been continuing with the class, then you will have all the concepts that I think you need going into second year classes that depend on this one. So I'm really confident, and I've seen the quality of your work. So you should be absolutely fine. And I'm comfortable that the grades are going to be just as they would be normally. The distribution will be the same. The quality of your work that I'm looking at is excellent. And as I say, the class average, I believe, it will either be the same as normal, because I've been doing this for a while, or it may even be slightly higher. So stick with it, do your absolute best, and then see how it works out. Okay? If you have not submitted your Newspaper 3 assignment, Bridget, then just go ahead and submit it now, please. Your TA will be looking for it, and that will be just fine. I would encourage you to get that in when you can. Okay? All right. So the grades as they stand, what I did was I spent a lot of time last weekend setting up the grade sheet in Course Spaces, and I've asked the TAs to go through and enter all the raw score grades for all the different assignments, and I've already entered the midterm grades that I have for you. We will be putting in the rest of those grades and getting everything nice and tidy for you. And once that's done, I will open that up so that you can see the record of your raw scores on the Course Spaces site. Now, I want to just explain to you very clearly how to read that. The right-hand column of your final grade that shows on Course Spaces includes the weightings for the things that you have already submitted. So it is essentially a sense of the points that you already have towards the class. And the way I explain it is that you have 100 points that you can earn as you go into the class. And by the time you go into the final exam, you ought to be able to see how many points you have earned out of the possible number that you could have earned going into the final. The final, as you know, is worth 35% of the grade. It will also include the 1% from Lab 11, so that's 36%. And then you have a 3% for participation, which the TAs and I do together at the very, very end of the class when we've looked at everything else. So that's 39% of the grade that you haven't yet earned. That means that you have a possible 61 points that you could have earned already going into the final. And that tells you my goal is that everybody has already passed the course before they go into the final. That's my goal. And I look through and make sure to see where everyone's at. You can do that too, but I do it. And I always will write to anyone who I think is missing things, who I think is I might be worried about. So if you do see an email from me between now and the final, I would really, really encourage you to respond to that immediately, because that's me looking to help you to make sure that you get through nicely, and I make sure that your grade is where it needs to be. So my hope is that everyone's passed the course before they go into the final. And then what you get from the final and from your participation grade will then determine the overall grade that you get at the end. Hopefully that makes sense to you. But you will be able to see on Course Spaces before you go into the final exam on the 18th exactly where you stand on each and every item that you have undertaken. And if you think that there is something missing, that is the time, please, to email me, or if it's a piece you've submitted to your TA, to email your TA, because that means we still have time to fix it before the final grades go in. Once the final grades go in, it's very hard for me to change anything after that. It requires multiple levels of signature from the dean and so on. So I like to make sure that all the grades are in really good shape before that happens. So I will send a note to Course Spaces once I have opened up the Course Basis grading spreadsheet, and you can see everything, and you will be able to see every item and what you have for it that's been recorded. Now, you need to note that we record the raw scores in there. I have the sheet set up so it calculates all the weighting and so on. But for example, for the research lab, it was out of 48 points. So 48. So you will see a raw number out of 48. The spreadsheet will have taken that into account, calculated a percentage, and then weighted it according to the amount of weight that that assignment contributes to the final grade. So that will all have been done. But you need to just check to make sure that the raw score that you were expecting is also the raw score that's recorded in the spreadsheet. Similarly, for example, the newspapers are out of 10, and you'll want to go and see how many points you got out of 10. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It's as transparent as I can possibly make it, and it allows you to check everything and make sure that you're comfortable going into the final, knowing where you stand. And you're welcome to type any questions about that as you go. Okay? Now, in terms of the actual, my tips for actual content and so on, when it comes to the exam and doing well in the exam, it's useful to have your ID with you in front of you, just so that you can quickly type that number in, have that number ready to type into your exam, and also your name. That's important. And then I'm just having someone saying that they can't hear me as well, so I'm turning things up here just in the hopes that it will help you. There we are. So in terms of tips for getting ready for the final exam, have your ID in front of you just so you can type that number in. In terms of the style and format of the final exam, it will be extremely similar to the midterm that we did. So a mixture of a very few multiple choice, but mostly short answer, and then longer paragraph essay type answers. And those of you who've been working on Lab 11, I've given you as much help as possible to try to show you how to think about structuring draft for an essay, the kinds of essays that you would normally write for the class. So if you can kindly have that, that's great. Now then, in terms of, people often ask me, is the final cumulative? The final is cumulative in the sense that if we're talking about, for example, human geography, and its importance to understanding global issues, for example, then you could use examples, data, concepts from anywhere at all from the course. But in terms of specific definitions and so on, I haven't yet tested the specific concepts since the midterm. So there'll be more of a focus on testing details and concepts and understanding from the lessons since the midterm in that sense, whereas the cumulative aspects would be you thinking about the whole course in terms of, say, the long answers. So hopefully that makes sense. I want to just give you a note about the lecture materials and also the textbook readings. Stick to using the session outlines that I have provided you in terms of what you're responsible for. So the section on human-environment relations, I took that out because that is covered in another course. There's some deliberate overlap there with 101A. So that was the section that I took out. So if you can just focus on what the outlines say rather than on the readings that were detailed in the original syllabus, that will help. And I always put that statement on the bottom of the syllabus that says, you know, extenuating circumstances, things may change in the course. Honestly, I have never ever had to use that before, but here we are in that situation. So go by the outlines and what the outlines have asked you to do. The outlines are consistent with everything we've done together in class, and so that's what I know I can ask you to be responsible for. I can ask you about things like the YouTube video that I asked you to look at for Lab 11. The chapters that we've read that have been on the outlines support what we've done in class in terms of learning. Any of the examples that are there. I also might include things from the labs. I've done a little bit on the field trip already, so you've done that, but I might ask you about your experiences in terms of preparing for the debates and what occurred there for you. We can talk about the practice debates and what you did there in lab and so on. So pretty much anything that we've done together in this class, as well as your readings, using the things that you've learned from the newspaper, articles, all of these things could be things that you could bring to the exam that would show us your learning. So I'm going to ask you there if you have any questions about the content of the exam. And while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions there about the content of the exam, I should also mention that because the exam is online, I don't know if this is lucky or not lucky for you, but I won't be able to, in this case, make you draw things because that would be too hard for you to submit. So you can use descriptive words for shapes and so on. But normally I would be making you draw a population pyramid using the data. And this time I might be having to ask you to select from some things that I've drawn for you on the exam or that kind of thing. So you might want to have a calculator with you, just so that in case you want to make any calculations, you might have to do that. But sadly for me, you won't be able to do any drawing this time. So hopefully that helps. It doesn't mean though that we won't use diagrams in the exam itself. So for example, you might want to check on, say, the von Thunen diagram or Weber's diagrams in the textbook, just so that you're really clear about how those processes work. So I might put some diagrams on the exam and ask you to explain them as opposed to being able to draw them. And Ellie's asking me about the textbooks and readings. Ellie, most of what is in the textbook, I have done notes for you in terms of the slides I've given you and in terms about what I have talked about in class. But you would want to have your own notes, for example, on the YouTube video on How Fair is Fashion. You would want to have notes about things you have read yourself and notes about things that you've done for your newspaper assignments. So For example, in the long answers, I'm going to, if you can add data there, if you can add dates, authors or names, places, those kinds of details, that is going to help a lot. So hopefully that helps. Roughly how many questions Jessica's saying on the exam? Jessica, I write a new exam every time. And so I don't have the midterm in front of me. I can't quite remember how many questions were on there. I want to say maybe 20. Maybe some of you could remember that. This is a little bit longer. So you're probably talking about 25 questions maybe with some long answers, but some of them will have multiple parts to them. This exam I will try to make it so that you don't feel quite so pressed for time. I'm not trying to test that this time. But you will need to work through it at a nice pace. And stick to the definitions and so on that we've used in class. I can use Wikipedia like everyone else. Don't use Wikipedia because those definitions are often wrong. So stick to what we've done in class. I know you can look things up, I get that, but if you stop to look things up, you're going to get pushed for time in the exam. So try to have it in your head and just have some useful things in front of you. Maybe have your course spaces, up and ready just in case. So hopefully that helps you a bit. There'll be multiple questions. Multiple parts to the questions, and so my humble advice is, as you're looking to look at the parts of the exam, make sure that you are looking in that right hand margin just to check how many marks it is, and try to allocate your writing in terms of the marks that are available for it. And one-word answers are fine, okay? If the answer is just one word, so one-word answers are fine. Simon's asking if you can see no, you can't see your answers on Course Spaces yet, Simon, because as I said, I haven't opened that up yet. I have asked the TAs to put the marks in, and I will send you a note to Course Spaces once the grades are in from the TAs and where I can open them up for everybody. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so my biggest tip, and hopefully you could see that from the midterm. My biggest tip for studying is to go back to those outlines again and study the sample questions at the end. Okay, so the sample questions occur at the end of each and every outline, and try very hard to study using those questions. So step one is to put your outline next to you on your desk on the one hand, then have your PowerPoint slides next to that, and make sure that from the PowerPoint slides that you have in your notes, you can fill in every single outline for every single class, just like you did when you were studying for the midterm. Then go to the bottom of the outline and try to answer the questions on the bottom. And that will give you the biggest clue as to the types of questions that I will ask you on the final. In addition to that, make sure you follow the steps in Lab 11, which will give you a kind of hopefully more fun, interesting way of studying some of those other aspects. For example, if you follow through those steps that I've given you for writing the essay for globalization as a practice essay to write, hopefully that will mentor you, I hope so, in the kinds of interesting essays that not only I will enjoy reading on the final, but also that other profs may enjoy reading from you in the future. I hope so. Yes, Jessica, point form is totally fine. Absolutely it is. You know, if you're filling in a box and it's just a one-word answer and it's 1 point, point form is totally fine. The only place where I would ask you not to do point form is the long answers at the end, where obviously you're going to need to use paragraphs and long sentences just like you did before. Okay, be as specific and precise in your answers as you can. Use the terminology we've used. Give data, give statistics if you can. Be as precise as you can. This really nails the answer to a question, and it really makes you stand out. Remember, if you are asked an opinion about something, what are the 3 answers? The 3 answers can be yes, no, or maybe. But the most important thing is to start your long answer by defining whatever terms are in there. And define the terms first, give an answer, and then give me some really concrete examples from your experience, from the course, from your readings, from your newspaper, wherever, but give me those concrete examples. Some people really saved themselves on the essay last time by giving examples that showed that they understood the ideas, even if they didn't get the definition right. So please don't forget to do that. Yes, Tiana, the long answer questions are at the end. They are part 4. And as always, I will mark the long answers because they're the toughest to mark. And I will also be marking the question that's on Lab 11. Now, Victoria, you've asked a very good question. I had promised that you could also handwrite and submit back. And I'm not sure how many people need to do that. Typing is easier for us to grade, but if you wish, you can definitely print out, handwrite, and photo back. You totally can. Now, the only thing is you really just please take good photos so that we can read them easily, because we're reading them on the screen. So just be sure that they're really clear. They don't have to be tidy, the photos. They just have to be really clear so that we can read them, if that makes any sense. I did have one question for all of you. If you are taking photos, what format will you take them in? The reason I asked that question is because I have to set the system to accept particular kinds of files. So if you are going to be, so I've set it to accept PDF files, obviously, and Word files, including old versions of Word. So you should be fine for that. And that will be the default that I would expect most people to use, including some people who have accommodations who actually find it easier to type, and I get that. So that's fine. But if you are the kind of person like me who likes to print out the exam, handwrite into it, because that's how you think, that is totally fine too. Then you'll need to have a way of, you can scan it on an iPhone, you can use a scanning program, or you can take photos and so on, but it would help me to know what formats those of you who plan to do that will be using. That will then allow me to set the system ahead of time so that it will accept all the things that you will most normally be submitting. Okay? So yes, what Tiana's saying here is that with an iPhone, that's what I'm saying. You can do a scan and save them as a PDF. That's the easiest, and I've also tested that with the TAs, so I know that those are easy to read. I'm also seeing here that Nick is saying JPEG, PNG, and PDF. The PDF is there already. I will make sure that those other two are there as well. But again, if you're planning to use something that I'm not expecting, if you can please let me know, then I'll be sure to know that the system will accept it, because the system in CourseSpaces will only accept the things that I have specifically designated. I want you to have as much flexibility as possible, and the more we can do of this ahead of time, the more you'll be able to focus on your learning in the exam and sharing that learning with us. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear your amazing learning, your ideas. I don't want you worried about the technology, okay? So if you have any questions about the technology, please, please, please don't leave it until the last minute. Figure that out now. Figure it out this week while we have lots of time, okay? Maybe do a test run or something, all right? Try it with your friends. Okay, that's great. Now then, I think those are most of my tips for the exam, but now I want to ask you any other questions right now for the exam. I'll get into some samples and things later, but I'm more interested in if you have any questions about logistics and so on. Because I want this to be as clear to you as possible, and really feel like, okay, I know what I'm going to have to do, I know where I'm going to go, and so on. So on the 18th, those links will be live, and you'll be able to submit any time in that period. So hopefully now that's clear to everybody. I'm just going to wait and see if there are any immediate questions. What I would suggest is that you do use my online office hours as well the day before the exam for any concepts that you're not clear about, and I'll be really happy to explain any of them or help you with anything immediate the day before as well, okay? So now what I'd like to do, and I'll keep looking for questions on the right-hand side here, but now what I'd like to do is something we've talked about all term, is thinking about whether you're interested about any other courses in geography, or I've introduced you to lots of profs, both virtually and in person, a few, in terms of courses that you can take in geography. And so what I've done here is put a slide up that has some links in it where you can follow up if you're interested. So the geography department website shows you quite a lot of great stuff. There's a great link there on careers and types of careers you can have with a geography degree. There's also always a list of all the courses that we're offering. Some of you have been very kind and written to me to ask what other courses I teach. I teach a second year course in economic and political geography, which kind of expands on some of the things we've done here in this class that you've had a taste of. And then there is a partner course to that, which deals with social and cultural geography. that's taught usually by Ruben Rose Redwood. So those are the two kind of foundational courses, if you like, in second year that build off of this course, and they're 218 and 211. I also teach a course on community mapping, which is really fun, in third year, and I often do that in the summer, although I'm not doing it this summer. And then I teach a course at the fourth year level called Personal Space, which is really fun, which deals more with feminist geography. And I also teach another first year course in the fall called Social Sciences 190, and that is a course on cities, and it looks at cities from the point of view of all different kinds of disciplines in social sciences. Geography for sure, but also economics and political science and sociology and so on. And it has lots of different professors who talk about their views of cities and how they study cities and so on. And it also has a strong international component to it. So I love it when it has international students in the course and they come and bring lots of different experiences from overseas and so on. So I'll be teaching that course as well in the fall if you're looking for a fun first year elective. And then when you get to fourth year, if you're interested in honors, the honors program, I also coordinate and run that program. So those are just some of the courses I teach, but there are lots of courses that I've introduced you to that other professors teach in human environment, and in various aspects of work that I've introduced you to through the term. So I hope something's caught your interest. I hope I've converted a few of you to human geography. But if this is the only course you ever take in geography, I hope you've enjoyed it and had fun with it, at least, and learned some things. So those are some resources. Co-op is a very important part of our program. People often will do a co-op or an internship, and that may often result in an opportunity or a job later on, which is pretty exciting for people. Also gives you a way to test out your academic skills in practice and so on. And I have given you also here the link for the Geography Undergraduate Advisor, who's the person who advises on progress through the course and how you do your degree. So there's just a few resources there that I thought you might find interesting. I also love to see students when we're not in this weird world that we're in the moment, but I love to see students in my office, and I'm always happy to talk to you about your career ideas and where you're going and all of those kinds of things. Always happy to recommend other courses and other profs that you can talk to. So those are just some resources there for you. In terms of Seth's question, yes, the essay question, I've given you some examples of how to draft an essay question and how to do a really good job with it. And I've given you a practice one to do in Lab 11, and that will be in part 4 of the exam. And it will be a kind of a, if you want a long answer, a long short answer or a short essay. Depends how you want to describe it. But very similar to what we did in the first midterm. Okay? So now what I'd like to do is try to have a little bit more fun going back to the beginning of the class. And just so I don't lose this chat, I just want to write down what Nick said in terms of JPEG and PNG. So I'm going to add those. I've just written that down. Sorry. It's multitasking here, looking at the chat and looking at the slides and all of that. All right. So I want to come back to geography and where we started. And one of the things I love to do in the last class is have us draw our concept map for the whole class, the whole course, everything we've done together. It's a really fun activity. It's way more fun, I think, than sitting looking through a list of concepts. as a way of studying. So hopefully some of you have tried this already. I hope so. And here's the activity that I asked you to do. I asked you to draw your concept map as a visual representation of everything that you had learned in the course, and do it in a totally personalized way. And it should in some ways be a representation of your journey in the class, the exciting things you've found out, new things you've learned, surprises you've had, hopefully good ones. So I wanted to ask you on here, did you do a concept map? What did it look like? I would love it if you would send it to me. If you'd like to. I love to see concept maps. They're always so creative. But they're really fun to see, and it's really fun for me to see how people think about the course. So hopefully some of you can type into the chat in a second here. It's also a great thing. One of the things I did in Lab 11 was suggest that you interview a partner, somebody you got to know in lab, or something that you connected with over technology, to look at. It's just a great thing to have a conversation with someone, have a virtual cup of tea or coffee with someone about your concept map. You could also, share it, and then just have fun talking about it. What strikes me is how, if you do this from memory, it will show you how much you've learnt. If you can draw a concept map of the course without necessarily looking at your notes, it will show you how deeply you've internalized some of these concepts. So, I wanted to show you an example. A couple of people sent me very, very kindly. So Hannah's typing right now. So let me put hers up, and then I'll come back to Tiana's. Here's Hannah's right here. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Hannah, for sending it. Can you tell us a bit about it? It's absolutely beautiful. Hannah's concept map that she showed us, and I can try to, if I can make it here. I'll cover myself as much as I can and put it up so it's a bit bigger. There, hopefully you can see it a bit better now. But I'm hoping that Hannah can type some things about her concept map and why she drew it that way, and what she was thinking as she was drawing, because it's absolutely gorgeous. So that was the one that that Hannah shared. And it looks like a lily, so I was wondering particularly why a lily. Yeah, it is a lily. Okay, it's a chart of a lily, she says. Okay. So hopefully you're reading here in the chat what she's saying. Obviously, Hannah is an amazing artist. I want to say you don't have to be an artist to do a concept map, but I think this one's truly beautiful, and I've never seen one like it before. So that's gorgeous. So those of you who didn't send me yet a map, I'm gonna come back to Tiana's in a minute. How about other people's maps? What did you draw? What did you come up with? And let's take a look at Tiana's here. Again, let me see if I can make it a bit bigger so you can see the detail, because the detail's gorgeous. So Tiana here has used these hexagons, and then I made a big, I blew up the pink one, which is the urban hexagon right here, so you could just see it a bit better. Maybe Tiana, you can tell us something about your concept map. That would be lovely if you would do that. And you can see here these gorgeous details, and I'm just wondering why you were inspired to pick those shapes, and how you came up with those details. What's wonderful to me is that every concept map is unique. You can just see the details, but you can also see it's a window into people's minds about how, how they think and how they put information together. And I don't know, Hannah, what your major is, or if that connects in any way to the way that you decided to represent what you wanted to do. And Tiana, I don't know about your major and how this connects to what you wanted to do. So yes, I'm looking in the chat here, and I'm seeing Tiana talking about Kristalla's hexagons, which is really cute, and how the pieces fit together. And then I just love the level of detail in this one, and how you've put all these pieces in. And it's kind of, so I've seen that before. I've seen the idea of a jigsaw before, but I've never seen anyone do a Kristalla one before. So that's really cool to me. Done something really weird. Okay. So that was another beautiful concept map that I got. Completely different again, but equally amazing to me. This is so cool. Okay, this makes sense, Hannah, that you're an artist. And what I wanted to mention is the class that I talked about, the personal space class that I teach at the 400 level. It's just been regularized for next year, because the students said they wanted that. It's the personal space class. It's it does this with my end projects. So you can I can see huge potential here for end projects, creative. I do what's called a creative representation in that class, and as an end goal, instead of a regular essay or paper or something, we do a creative representation. And so I can see a lot of potential talent for this class in 4th year. And I'm panicking because Tiana is saying her audio is not working, but okay, she's back now. Okay, thank goodness. All right. So I wanted to celebrate and thank Tiana and Hannah for sharing those gorgeous, gorgeous concepts maps with us. But I'm hoping there are some other ones out there. It's not just in terms of representation, but we know from the learning literature that actually if you put knowledge together in different ways like this, it really, really helps you to learn. And I think what hopefully you can see from both of these, particularly with regard to this point in terms of Tiana's, is you can see how many gorgeous concepts there are in here. And I want to ask you, how many concepts do you think you have learned this term already? I want you to guess how many concepts you think we've covered, we've learned. Because I always do this at the end, because if I were to tell you at the beginning of the class how many concepts you were going to learn, I think you would run away screaming. I know I would have done if I was an undergrad. But you would be amazed how much you've learned. And if you can produce a concept map that looks like either of these two, then you've learned a huge amount. And so this is partly why I do this, to show you. But I'd love you to guess how many concepts you think you've learned this term. And then I want to ask you, do you want me to list them for you? In class, I do a fun game with all the concepts that you've learned, and we play a game in class, but you are welcome to use the concepts that I post. And okay, so Tiana's saying 50 concepts. Not even close. Not even close. Think more. Think higher. Ryan's hedging his bets big time. More than one, less than 1,000. That's cute. Jaden's guessing 30. Okay. That's cool, because you're going to be really surprised. Simon's saying over 50. Yeah, more. Even more. Okay, so when I calculate it, okay, who is the Buds of May again? Is that Dylan? Gosh, you have to remind me. 100, Ellie 150, 75, 150, okay. Yeah, when I calculate it, it's about 250. I love Wade's answer. You know, Wade, I think you're probably pretty spot on, because it's about 250. It's so cool to hear you typing on here. Gemma! Oh, Gemma, okay, you're the Buds of May. Okay, hi, Gemma. So Dylan's been getting credit in my head for your typing. I know Dylan has a handle that is also not his name, and I muddle it, so I'm really sorry. I'm writing this down right now. Okay. I did think it was an odd handle for Dylan, but, you know, you'll have to forgive me. I've written it down now. Okay. Thanks, Gemma. All right. So, yeah, I think it's about 250. And I will post those for you if you'd like me to. But you have to promise me not to study using those concepts. Because I promise you all that will happen, if you sit down and go through the concepts one after the other, you know what's going to happen? You're just going to go to sleep. Okay? So, promise me not to study that way. That's the worst way to study. But I'm just sharing the list with you so that you can see the incredible learning you've done. And if you want to, you can go through the list that I post. And I'll post it on Course Spaces after today. And you can go through that list. And if there's a concept on there that you read and you've never heard of it, you might want to check it out and look it up. Okay? So just check for any that you haven't heard of. If you haven't heard of it, you might want to check it out, okay? But if you have heard of it, you're probably good and on the right track. So, I'm just reinforcing you are amazing learners. So take lots of credit. And Wade, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to count exactly the number of concepts and see if I can make it to 234. And you know what? I bet you might be right. So we'll see, okay? I'll write to you if it's right. Okay. You're very, very close. I know that for sure. I always say about between 200 and 250, so I know you're about right. Well done. And it's so cool to see you on here. Thanks for coming today. All right. So, concept maps. Gorgeous, gorgeous concept maps. Thank you for sharing those, Tiana and Hannah. But also, thank you to all of those who've been involved with sharing their ideas about it. And see what you can think about what your concept map says about you. Like, is it organic? Are you sort of a biologist? You know, is it very straight lines? Is it structured? Are you a scientist in your thinking? Thanks for just thinking that through. Okay. All right. Now then. So those were those two. Now then, one of the things I suggested you do, Jaden, you're going to make me cry. Thank you for saying that, but you're going to make me cry. Okay. This is not. I love this class. I love this class. You guys are amazing. Okay. So I'm going to suggest then that, you know, it's really important in this social distancing time or whatever that it's called, that you really keep connected with people. I've been sitting on my own here now for 2 weeks in my house, and I don't feel lonely because I'm teaching and I'm talking with, you know, each of you on Zoom, and I have my 2 cats and, you know, all of that. But, you know, it's going to get tough once classes are ended. It's going to get hard. So you have to make sure to keep connected with everybody, okay? And if I'm giving you an excuse to do that, then I'm happy. So call up a friend, say, hey, I've got this crazy teacher who, you know, is asking me to interview my friends about my concept map. Do you mind if I do that with you over a cup of tea? Any excuse to keep connected, very, very important, okay? So here are some interview questions that you might think about asking yourself or asking someone over a chat or something, or a FaceTime or whatever it is you're doing to stay in touch, okay, and stay mentally well. Think about some of these questions. And again, they'll just stretch your mind, thinking about the course, help you make connections, that kind of thing. All right, so try to do that, mostly because it's good for you mentally as much as everything else, okay? Now, the other thing you can do is look at those course goals that we had at the very beginning of term. You remember we looked at the syllabus? Syllabus is still up on the Course Basis site. See how you did. How did you do towards achieving the course goals that we had? So here's a list of some of them. I can make them a bit bigger here. But we wanted to build a strong knowledge foundation. Some of you wanted to acquire some academic skills, say around practicing essay writing or presentation skills. And thank goodness you got to do some presenting before all this happened, because I know that was important to you. I wanted you to love geography just a bit more. So how did we do? Take a look at those goals and see how we did. You can type some things in chat if you'd like to. Think about these goals and how well we achieve them, and whether or not you've got further towards achieving your university goals, what you wanted to get out of your degree. How have you managed to still do that even though we're online? So think about those, and that might be a tip for a question for the final exam. I might ask you to pick a learning goal that you had at the beginning of term, and I might ask you to talk about how you'd achieved it. So you might want to think about that as a tip for the final. Thank you for your beautiful comments. And I'm so delighted that you love geography. That makes me super happy. But think about other goals that you achieve. You have certainly, those of you who are on here, learnt to be amazing communicators. That's for sure. There's no way that you could be succeeding as well as you are in this course, submitting assignments, figuring out how to do the final online. There's no way you could do that without being great communicators. And do you know the number one thing that employers want? I'm going to type this. Do you know what the number one thing employers want? They want great communicators. That's the number one thing that they all say they want. So you definitely help with that. I love what Ryan's typing right now. So I hope that's true. Ryan is saying, hopefully if we can understand the world a bit better, it makes it just a little bit less scary. And I hope that's true. I hope that's true for all of you, even now in these really difficult times. I really hope so. Hopefully you can see its relevance. I hope so. I really hope you can see its relevance. And that beautifully takes me on to kind of the next segment. You know, we've talked about globalization. We've talked about how, you know, maybe geography doesn't matter as much anymore because we can all be in different places, and just like we are now, we can all be in different places and still kind of learn together or whatever it might be. So how can geography still matter? So sometimes people will say, people who clearly don't know me, will say, well, you know, is geography so important anymore? Are individuals' places so important anymore? Is space so important anymore? And they'll say things like, and this is from the very end of your outline last class, you know, time-space compression. We can be anywhere in the world but still be connected. The friction of distance has gone down. So, you know, travel costs for transporting goods has decreased substantially. We can connect to different cities just with a touch of a button now. Places are no longer unique because, you know, every McDonald's will look the same. And these are some of the things people would say. And I prepared this slide before in the situation we're in now. But if I asked you this question now, I bet you'd have some really good, interesting things to say about it. So, does geography still matter? That's the question. Like, why is it important? Why is it important still to study human geography? So, a big tip for the final is being able to answer why is it important to study human geography? So, if I asked you that question in an exam for an essay, I'd love to know what you would say as an answer to that question. And that's a big tip for the final exam. How would you answer that question? Are there lots of examples you could give? Yes, Tiana's saying it's entangled in every way in our lives, and I totally agree with you. I see it everywhere I go. Yes. So, population pyramids, for sure. Do you think that this virus will be so bad we will see it in pop pyramids? I wonder. I don't know. I hope not. I hope it won't be that bad. But it's entirely possible we might see it. So let's hope not. But yes, all the work that we've done on diffusion, the concept of diffusion and how diseases spread around the world, but also how we come together socially to solve problems. So I hope that whatever new challenges that you have in your lives that come up, when I started this term, I couldn't have predicted the coronavirus challenge. There's no way I could have predicted that. But I hope that whatever challenges come into your lives, the tools that I've given you and some of these concepts will help to make these ideas less scary. And hopefully, when you're looking at the news and you're listening to the reports on the coronavirus, at least it gives you some tools for understanding what the advice you're getting might be relevant and important to listen to, and what some of that advice might be just people trying to scaremonger or make a news item out of it. You can see that diffusion is relevant as an idea. You can see why the logic of self-isolation is useful in terms of flattening the curve, in terms of how much hospital provision we have. You can see how it can disproportionately impact elderly or vulnerable people, but how the rest of us who are healthy might actually have a really big part to play. You can also understand social geography and isolation, and how isolation is so important in understanding how we need to reach out to people on social media so that they don't get lonely or depressed and so on. So I think you could write an amazing essay now on how important human geography is, and maybe some of you won't write around the coronavirus, and I'll read something different than that, but I totally understand if that's what you want to write about. So yes, you're writing in the chat about the concepts that we've talked about, globalization, and the need to understand it and how it plays out and so on, but taking us right back to social geography and how we make maps. How I've been watching all these maps that have been being made by students at universities across Canada, trying to help show how the virus might spread and how we can impact helping other people. So I didn't want that to be the example of why human geography is so important. But these examples come up, they always do, and I have never had a term where we've had so many relevant examples for what we've been talking about coming up. So, here we are. I've talked about over 200 concepts, 234 main concepts that we've learned together in just a short term. If you go through those concepts and you come across one you don't understand, and you've looked it up in your textbook and you can't find it, don't hesitate to come to my online office hours, and we'll do it in Zoom so we can actually see each other and talk. I want to thank everybody who has shared resources. You have, for example, Tiana, and you just shared your concept map with us, so did Hannah. Hannah, you shared yours, thank you so much. But all through the term, people have sent me links to things I've been able to post for everybody. They have shared amazing resources. You have shared your family stories, your personal stories. You have contributed here in the chat room. You've just been a presence in the chat room. You've come to my office and talked to me about your great ideas and your hopes for the future and your careers and all of these wonderful things. So every single person who's done that and who's shared resources with other people, thank you for doing that and contributing so much to everybody's learning. Without you doing that, the class doesn't work without you doing that. I've also kept a slide on the course experience survey. It has been the weirdest term ever. And I don't know if they're even rerunning the survey or whether they'll even, properly statistically analyze it. But I promise that the results that you put in will be available to me to at least read. So, if you have time, and what I use the course experience survey for is to improve this class for the future. All of the good things about the course, all the bad things are my fault, but all of the good things about the course have been reinforced or suggested or helped or enhanced with past student input. So whatever you tell me about the course this time, I will try to use for the future. And if you even want to tell me about the online bits, because obviously I'm going to have to think about this in the future and learn to do better for that. So if you want to talk to me about that, or if you just want to send me an email with your feedback from the course, I love that too. It's always helpful to have feedback, even in this weird situation we're in. And I would just say, please, please, please keep in touch. When this all dies down, don't hesitate to come back and see me in my office and chat and keep in touch in the summer. And if you get into trouble and you don't have a support network, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You know how to find me. Okay? So, I'm going to bring the class to a close for now. It always makes me really sad. It always does when the class is over. But I hope it's just a beginning. And I hope very much I'll see you in classes in the future. I'll see you in the corridor in the future. And my absolute affection and admiration to all of you who've continued coming to class. And take care of yourself. Stay safe. And we'll see you soon, I hope. Okay? So I'm going to wave and stay just a bit, just so that the class doesn't, so you can still see everything until the end, because I still haven't really quite figured out how that works. But I'll stay just a little while, and that's the end of the class. And as I say, love and affection to all of you, and take care. All right? Hope to see you soon.